Hey, good morning, everybody. It is Spiritual Healthcare Day 62. Nice to see everyone. It's good to see people every morning that we do this. It's just fantastic. It's really raining here yet again. So I hope you guys are doing amazing. Welcome to the new day, and as I say, day 62, Spiritual Healthcare. And this is going to be actually a really cool. This is going to be a cool episode because. And a cool discussion in class, because I want to get into probably where many of you guys actually first saw me and were first introduced to Entity Seekers. So this is going to be really awesome. Good morning, Shadow and Will and Marge and Patricia. Nice to see you guys. Nice to see everybody. It's good to see all of you. Today is gonna be really fun because I get so many questions about my appearance on a haunting way back, and it was like, I don't even know what year that was. It was like 2006 or something. Like, it was like a while ago. It was a long time ago. So we're gonna delve into this today and answer some questions and things like that about a haunting, because as I say, there's been so many questions I've gotten over the years about it, and it did so well on Discovery Channel because I think people connected with it in a very different way, which was really good. So good morning, Sally. Nice to see you. Good morning, guys. It's so nice to see everybody this morning. As I say, this is going to be really fun. This is like throwback for me because it's just the throwback for me. To go back to a haunting and whatnot. It wasn't my first TV show back in the day. It was. I started with what had I done at that point? I'd done CBC, and I had done a couple of shows for them, and I did a show that I had running on Shaw TV for a good, oh my god, it was 6 seasons, called Haunted Edmonton, and that was a really fun show to do. I got to go like different places around Edmonton and whatnot, and take people through the process of investigations, and we did clients' places, we did businesses, we did all sorts of things. It was really fun. It was a really good little show. It lasted for quite a number of years. But it was all before I did a haunting on Discovery Channel. But we're going to talk about that one because that's the one that I think everybody is familiar with, and it's definitely the show that I get the most questions about. So I would take you guys through the whole story, like what happened and the craziness that ensued in that apartment, because let me tell you, talk about the wolf in sheep's clothing personality type with these negative entities. We've talked about that, the different profiling of how these entities work, and this was it's an eye-opener to live with one, let me tell you. I've lived with a couple of them, and this one was definitely the most intricate, that's for sure, and intelligent and all of those things. So so we're going to go into all of that today. We're going to talk about a haunting and what that looked like, what that was, what the real case was, and whatnot. So for those of you guys who haven't seen it, what I'm going to do is I am going to, as the like to do and whatnot at the end, I'm going to post a link to the episode on the Entity Seeker Facebook page, so you guys can go watch it if you haven't seen it. It was the last episode of season 4. It was funny because the show itself wasn't actually supposed to have happened, and I'll talk about that in a little bit as well. It was a whole bunch of crazy circumstances that came together to make this go on. Good morning, Des. How are you? I hope you're doing good. I hope you guys are having relatively good weather. We are like raining like crazy for the last couple of days. Apparently tomorrow is supposed to get a bit better. We're supposed to but right now it is raining, and there was this weird mix of snow in there this morning. So I don't know what the weather is doing right now, but apparently this is the current situation in Edmonton. Nobody's going anywhere. It's wet and snowy, and that's okay. I want to talk about that and what the lessons learned within that environment, within that time period of my experience were, because it was probably one of the most eye-opening experiences. It was also a case where I ended up getting to work with Lorraine Warren during that time period also. So that was very interesting. Very interesting connection and how all that went down. But it taught me a ton about ownership and responsibility and all of those things within a paranormal event and situation and whatnot that I would not have gotten elsewhere. I would not have gotten that in another area. Yeah, so we'll go into that as well. Good morning, Mark. Hello, Mark. Good morning, Nigel. It's good to see you guys. Yeah, so that's what I want to cover today. I want to talk about, when we get into a case like that and what I discovered about my own emotional ownership of the situation, what happened, my experience of what went on. And we talked a little bit about this yesterday where I said, we can't turn around and label and put down what other people are experiencing because it either makes us uncomfortable or we feel that it's somehow wrong because it doesn't fit into our worldview somehow. And that's one of those things that we have to really be conscious of and we have to start thinking about as we're moving through not only what's going on with the pandemic and what's going on in our world right now, but when we're dealing with people with paranormal phenomenon that's going on. And when I'm teaching, I teach in the social work and psychology programs, my Teaching the Living program here in Edmonton. And it's very interesting because that's one thing I always have to cover with the students is the fact that their experience is not going to be the experience of the people that they're dealing with. And that's a big one. And a lot of people don't think about things like that because they think that it's going to be about fixing what it is that's going on in the house and in fixing this other person. If I can just do this thing for this other person, then therefore it's going to, their situation is going to improve. And it doesn't work like that. And investigations don't work like that either. When we're dealing with clients, we have to understand that their experience is valid. And when we begin to start to understand that, and we can understand the fine tuning of our approach and the taking away the heat and the judgment off of what's going on, then we can start to begin to hear and understand what is actually happening and their role in it as well as the role of the other people around them. So with my case, I'm sure some of you guys have seen that episode of A Haunting. It was very interesting. And as I say, it was my first dealing with a case that was so volatile in so many areas. And part of that was because I was in such a bad situation coming into it. So for those of you guys who have not seen the episode, I will recap for you a little bit. I was not very old at the time. I was in my early 20s and I was basically homeless and I was jumping from home to home to home to home. And I ended up in a roommate situation with a fellow that I worked with, a super nice guy, and they named him Bob in the episode. They named him, I don't know, they just picked whatever, I guess, I don't know. It seemed like they could have gotten more inventive, but that's all right. So anyway, they nicknamed him Bob. And basically what had happened was that there was two people, myself and my roommate, and both of us were kind of riding the same vibe. We were riding this sort of same dysfunctional frequency at the time because I was up and down and, sort of sitting in depression and all of that. And then I had my roommate who was coming into the situation with a lot of his own emotional baggage, a lot of shame. Some of the things we've been talking about in spiritual healthcare, okay? So a lot of shame, a lot of, unwillingness to be vulnerable, guarded, angry, all of these things. So these were all this sort of festering group of emotions that was coming together in this apartment, right? So we're both bringing this to the table. And as I say, I want to talk about this from both sides of that coin in a way, because I mean, I can share with you guys my experience. I can't share his experience, obviously, but this is my observation of what happened. So we've got a bunch of, two people that are coming together in this sort of dysfunctional pattern, looking for this place to live, right? And we end up, he was missing his kids terribly, really terribly. And his kids were living in another province at the time. And he was, as missing his family, missing his children and whatnot. And lo and behold, what ends up showing up is this intelligence within the house that starts to mirror and talk about, or talk to him, or so he says. It's speaking to him about being this lost little boy named Joseph. And what was interesting to me at the time was that the activity that I was experiencing, here's a great example of how two people can be literally in the same space experiencing two different things. I was experiencing this really strange kind of poltergeist type activity. It was really intriguing. Like I would, there would be these piles of dirt that would show up as these cone-shaped piles of dirt on the floor, and there would have been nobody home. Like he would, be off doing whatever for a couple of days and whatnot, and there would be these cone piles of dirt that would show up on the floor. Another thing that would happen that would be frustrating is, I would come home, hang my keys up or whatever, or I'd be going out and I'd have my keys on the hook, and I'd turn around to get them again to like pick them back up, and they would just disappear. I would get upset and whatnot, be looking around, look back on the hook, and the keys would be back. So a lot of things like this were going on. There were photographs that were taken where things would appear in the photo that weren't in the space at the time. That was always interesting. But like just really weird things like that. And then we would start to hear stuff going on in the kitchen, like somebody moving around the kitchen, walking back and forth up and down the hallway, banging, and you'd hear like cupboard doors closing and slamming and dishes rattling, all this stuff. And it would walk up and down the hallway, and then it got to the point where it would get to my door, and it would open the door, and you'd never see anything on the other side, but you'd see the doorknob turn and the door would open, and you'd be laying in bed, and you kind of got the feeling that something was there, and then all of a sudden the door would just slam shut, hard as it could, just slam shut, and then you'd hear the footsteps back down the hallway again. So it was a very strange situation to be in. So you couple that with all of the turmoil, of course, that's going on because of both of our situations. And then at the time, it wasn't long into that process that my roommate gets diagnosed with cancer. Okay, so that was a really big blow for him as well. It was some kind of blood cancer that he ended up diagnosed with. So, but again, I want to be able to share this story so that you guys can look at this in terms of what we know now about this kind of thing. So when we start to look at, as I'm piecing you guys through this, when we start to look at things like, that our emotions create our reality, right? How we're seeing things, what we're emitting, what we're bringing into us, what we're attracting. When we're sitting on that level of dysfunction and frequency, we're literally bringing that into our experience, because that's what we're in range of. If we're sitting up there in that pure positive energy, we don't bring this type of experience, into that realm. And here we had a situation where we've got two people that are feeling very out of control, and now we've got a haunting that is beginning to mirror, right, all of what that looks like. So, you can't see it, you can't touch it, you can't do, you can't yell at it. But it was manifesting in a way that was very much mirroring the state of being within the both of us, right? So we've got this very interesting situation that was building. At the time, of course, this is all hindsight 2020. This is all hindsight 2020, but you can look back and begin to see it. So, as this was starting to mirror, he began to believe that it was this little boy named Joseph, and that Joseph had lost his mom and dad, and it was this perfect fit into what he needed at the time, right? And we've talked about this before in spiritual healthcare, where oftentimes, entities will fill a role, they'll fill a space within somebody's experience. But in this case, of course, the behavior of this entity was not fitting the concept of a little child at all. It just wasn't, something wasn't right. Something was just off. And that's a pretty big red flag for any sort of negative haunting. So, and when we look at things like, spirit hauntings and stuff like that, those people, that's up in pure positive energy. That's, you're going to get a child haunting your house, man. Like, that's going to be like, that's pure positive energy right there. You're not talking about something that's negative. And this was just, those frequencies just do not match up, right? So something's not right. So as we're moving through this experience and whatnot, we had some pretty strange things happen. He was very much Wiccan, and he used a lot of candles and things like that to make peace in the space and whatnot. It was very beautiful. But there's a number of times where he would light these candles, and they would hiss and spark, just like crazy. Like I've never seen anything like it. I've never seen, other than like a pyro prop that I would use in a cirque show. And and none of these were trick candles or anything like that. They lit perfectly well before. And we'd end up seeing these strange pools of liquid in the wick, like in the bottom of the candle. It was like around the wick. It was really weird. But these would hiss and spark and whatnot, and you couldn't light these damn things for the life of us. So just really strange activity, and the recordings that we ended up getting back out of this place, because we would put down recorders and stuff, were absolutely bizarre. They're absolutely bizarre. They sounded like English language backwards, and it was some of the strangest EVPs I think I've ever recorded. So in the show, this was a bit of a misnomer. So in the show, they kind of put it out like this was the beginning of the development of Entity Seeker, which wasn't entirely the case. Steph and I had been working at the time with a different group of people, and we're beginning to get a pretty good background in doing this. So this was not our first go around with stuff and whatnot. We were beginning to build up Entity Seeker. I built Entity Seeker while I was homeless, believe it or not. That was one of those things where, during the time that I was homeless, I was always working. I was working at the call center and whatnot, and I was building Entity Seeker at that time period when I was not basically on lunch breaks and breaks at work and stuff like that. So everything was getting built sort of within this time period that I was, I was struggling trying to find a place to live. So all of this is going on at the time, so it's pretty chaotic. And and as this begins to reveal itself, I start to watch my roommate get very, very isolated, like very much cutting people off, walling himself up. I would come home and all the lights would be off, and he'd be sitting in the living room just talking to Joseph. So it just got very strange, very, very strange. And at the time, I had no understanding of the stuff that we now talk about, like frequencies, and understanding that our emotions play a role in influencing paranormal activity and teaching the living. None of that had happened, right? So I'm still going off, things that I'm reading about and whatnot. So I ended up, long story short, in touch with Lorraine Warren, who, was a very kind lady, very kind. I don't agree with her practices. I don't agree with her practices, but or what she was doing, but very very willing to help and offer advice and whatnot. So I ended up kind of working with her for a little bit on this, and it was really intriguing. She, of course, was very Catholic when she was alive. So she was very much about, you have to go get a priest, you have to go bless the house, you have to, do all of these things. And what I didn't understand at the time was that, if those things don't make you feel better, and because that's what this is all about, it's about getting up that emotional scale. It's about whatever is going to move you off the frequency of that negativity. And because I didn't understand that, I thought that was going to be the answer. So that's what I went and did. I went and found this priest who I don't think he believed a damn thing that I told him. But he came over with a friend of his, and they blessed the apartment and whatnot. And of course it did absolutely nothing. Like it just, it does nothing. Because as I say, it doesn't make me feel better. And because I'm not feeling better, right, then it's not moving me off of the frequency of that problem. So, needless to say, everything kind of ramped up and came back to the point where I ended up I just had to move out, because my roommate at the time did not believe that this was anything that was a negative. And, I ended up getting attacked a number of times. There was, just a lot of crazy that was going on. And it just, this was not a child, like whatever you want to label it, that's fine. But it's, this was not a child, but he wanted so badly to believe that this was somebody that he could look after. And it's kind of spiraled, right? So none of this was about, what I had to learn about this situation was none of it had to do with blessings. None of it had to do with all these outside answers and circumstances, nor did it have to do with the convincing of my roommate, because that was one thing that I kind of fell into that trap at the time was, in order to change this, I have to convince you to change and to do this. And the reality was that no, like, number one, that's his experience. It doesn't matter. But also the fact that, you know, my experience, what I was projecting, the energy that I was putting out there, played a massive role in the progression of what was going on. So I had to understand and own, what is my role? What am I projecting that I'm bringing this into my experience? How am I attracting this into my space because of what I'm thinking, what my inner dialogue is, what energy I'm projecting? So what am I learning? What is this entity here to show me? What is it teaching me? What am I supposed to understand about this lesson? Because that's what it is, it's a lesson. So it was an indicator. It's an indicator. No matter what you think the entity was, no matter what you think, it doesn't matter. All of that's irrelevant. It's an indicator as to where you're sitting. And if you've got this stuff going on emotionally, you know, and you've got this stuff going on in your experience, there's a reason. There's a reason. And to be able to, you know, turn that around, be able to tap into, you know, what it is that brings you joy, what it is that brings you peace, so that you can have the good interactions with these spirits that are incredible and brilliant and wonderful and loving. You know, to be able to get into the frequency and the realm of what that is, which is joy and passion and, you know, peace and, you know, just being in your connection, being in integrity, living your truth, you know, all of those things, and living without that sense of, you know, drama and shame and toxicity. That's what this is really all about. And so for me, within that case and within that within that time period that I was living there, it was about 6 months. You know, it really was about, okay, how do we bring this new energy into my experience? And the one thing that, like, I knew that I had to do at the time was to move out. I had to opt out. That I know I did right, where it was like, okay, comes a point where you've got a toxic situation and you have to be able to disengage. And then that happened. But I think, you know, looking back and going through, you know, what I went through, and to be able to understand the dynamics of how that incident began to manifest and create itself, you know, you have to be able to look back and own the things like that have happened. So, you know, thankfully over the years, like, I've been able to do that. I can look at that and say, you know, like, I own the energy that I brought into that, and see how it created something that was just, you know, it was I mean, it was unique and it was fascinating and, you know, terrifying, but very, very interesting. And it was a great introduction for me firsthand to understand teaching the living and begin to develop that program. And Stephanie and I began at that point to really work with that, to take a hard look at that case, and begin to understand exactly what it was that was fueling it, what my ownership was, what his ownership was, and how that was fed into. So it was, yeah, very, very interesting time period, and very unique. So yeah, and again, it was one of those situations, you know, where I really had the aha moment that it's like, wait a minute, you know, as much as all these people and these TV shows want to tell you that it's about, you know, going in and doing a blessing or this, that, or a smudging, or, you know, whatever that is, you know, at the end of the day, what matters is how you are feeling, how does that thing make you feel? And if it's something that is empowering and it feels good, it brings you joy, and you're not doing it from the standpoint of fear, and there's the other catch. You know, so many people go into these things, you know, and they're afraid of something and they want to get rid of it. I'm going to get rid of this, whatever that is. And as soon as you're pushing against that energy from this place of fear, and you're pushing against it, and you're doing it because you want to, you're looking to get rid of something, and you're looking to push against or attack something, you're automatically going to get a pushback. You're going to get more of it, because that's just how it's just how the universe works. We get more of this stuff, you know. So, you know, we have to be able to get into that place of joy and do it, and, you know, and put it forward from a place of you know, positive energy, so that we're not getting stuck in that nasty circle of you know, rehashing over and over again that vibration and that feeling of not being in control, you know, being fearful, pushing against, and doing all of those things, because it's gonna fail on you. It's gonna work backwards. So, you know, those were my big takeaways from this. And, I thought it was a very interesting case. And it taught me a lot. It taught me a lot. The people that worked on the show, New Dominion Pictures, I ended up becoming very good friends with the producer, Lisa Lacera, and she was so amazing. Both her and the entire team, we filmed here in Edmonton. They brought the crew in from California, and we filmed in Edmonton. And then they shot all of the recreation stuff in Virginia, of all places, because their production company is in Virginia, New Dominion Pictures. And we built this. I think we built a story and a saga of I guess a time capsule of what that period looked like. And, you know, I was really proud of how it turned out. As I say, there was a couple of differences in there. You guys will see, if you watch the episode, you guys will see my business partner, Stephanie Wirtz. She just one of the most incredible people. And I could not have developed any of this, teaching the living, any of it without Stephanie. She was amazing. And still pops in every once in a while. I still, you know, she sends me a few messages every once in a while. You know, she has gone back to source. She made her transition. So, so she pops in every once in a while, but she's on there. She does some interviews and stuff as well. So you get to see her. And as I say, Lorraine Warren, who, you know, very, very, very kind. And she really did have the best intentions, but, you know, her understanding, I think, of, you know, what goes on, was very much laden, of course, with the Catholic belief system. And if, you know, if you don't fall into that, as I say, those techniques just won't work. Right. And as I say, I'm not, you know, saying that she's necessarily wrong or, you know, whatever. I know a lot of people felt that both she and Ed were scam artists, and stuff like that, which was never good, but that was not my experience of her. She was, you know, she was very kind, and we talked on the phone and quite a number of times, which was cool. But yeah, so anyway, I wanted to leave you guys with that, and I wanted to read a little bit from probably one of my favorite books, which is Daring Greatly by Miss Brené Brown. And she had an interesting tidbit in here about shame, that I think is relevant, and I wanted to bring it up. So check this out. Fear and vulnerability are powerful emotions. You can't just wish them away. You have to do something with them. Many men, in fact, use their physiological descriptions when they talk to me about pissed off or being shut down. It's almost as if shame, criticism, and ridicule are physically intolerable. The therapist concluded, I got into therapy when my rage and my drinking were no longer manageable, when it started costing me my marriage and my relationships and my children. That's why I do the work I do today. Shame resilience, the 4 elements we discussed in the previous chapter, is about finding a middle path, an option that allows us to stay engaged and to find the emotional courage we need to respond in a way that aligns with our values. So what I love about this, and what I love about the work that Brené Brown does, what I love about the work, you know, all the people that we read about, Miss Iyanla Vanzant and all of these, you know, different individuals, I think what is so important to understand is that at the root of all of these hauntings, at the root of, you know, some of the negative stuff, not the positive stuff, because I'm telling you, more hauntings are positive than not. Like this communication with non-physical, you guys, you got to pursue it. It is the most brilliant and beautiful connection you will ever have, and it will take away your fear of death. I'm telling you, there is so much out there that is just pure joy when it comes to this stuff. But let me tell you, when we're dealing with something that has, you know, is negative and you know, seems to be kind of, you know, causing our world to cave in on us, we have to understand that it's an indicator, and have the courage to take a look at those things like shame and vulnerability, and you know, and being able to take a hard look at the experiences that we have going on within ourselves, so that we can understand what is being projected outwards. You know, and these intelligences that come into our experience, and the positive ones included, are indicators of where we are and whether or not, what can we do to either keep it going or cut the momentum short and do something different, make a different choice. And that's what this was all about for me, was, okay, understanding what do I own and how do I make a different choice going forward? What do I have to do in order to move this in a new direction? And those were the big lessons. So I hope that is something that you guys can take away today from all this. And that being said, we cannot go into our day without our affirmations, our health affirmations. We always go in pure positive energy. So everybody take a breath. It is natural for my body to be well. Even if I don't know what to do in order to get better, my body does. I have trillions of cells with individual consciousness, and they know how to achieve their individual balance. When this condition began, I didn't know what I know now. I don't need to understand the cause of this illness. I only have to gently, eventually release this illness. It doesn't matter how it got started, because it's reversing its course right now. And there's no hurry about any of this. My body knows what to do. Well-being is natural to me. My inner being is intricately aware of its physical body. My cells are asking for what they need in order to thrive, and Source is answering those requests. I'm in very good hands. My only work is to relax and breathe, and I can do that easily. Everybody take a breath. Thank you guys for yet another amazing morning of spiritual healthcare. I just am so grateful to have the platform to be able to do this with all of you every day and to be able to share this stuff with you about things that, that are going on in the world that we've experienced, so that we can come out on the other side of this in a brand new way and more solid and stable, and own ourselves, own everything, and be able to tell our story. To be able to tell our story without the emotional investment and attachment to the stuff that's happened to us, and understand that all of this is happening through us. Once we understand that, we can move ourselves in a brand new direction. So everybody have an amazing day, and I will see you guys tomorrow morning on Spiritual Healthcare, 10 a.m. Mountain Time. Please invite people and share this, and get people talking, because the more we can build this up, the better. So thank you guys so much, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye, everyone.